Carla Painter, and I'm a senior deputy county attorney at the Missoula County Attorney's Office.
Now, Carla, you and I have been talking a little bit back and forth about embezzlement, and I know during our weekly visits with County Attorney Kirsten Pabst, every now and then she'll throw in an embezzlement case with the weekly report, and sometimes it's a few $1,000s, sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So tell me a little bit, first of all, what is embezzlement and how prevalent is it in Missoula?
Embezzlement is essentially when you steal money from your employer, either money or assets or other property, and appropriate it for your own personal use. And it can happen in many different forms, many different ways, but essentially it's taking advantage of your employer financially.
Sure.
And it's a little bit more, at least more prevalent than I thought. When I first started taking over these cases, it seems like it's pretty common. And there are some trends that you notice when you're reviewing them that kind of make it seem like these people know what they're doing and they know how to prey on businesses. And I think that the people that do commit these crimes oftentimes don't just victimize one business. They might move on once they get caught and find someone else.
All right, so tell me exactly how it works. What kind of things do they do? And do most of them think, no one will ever catch me doing this?
I think so, because of the way that they structure their crimes. So it can take many different forms. It depends on the operating systems of each internal business. I've had one that involved some QuickBooks scamming, where this particular employee had absolute control of QuickBooks, and she would go in and she would essentially print out a check that was made out to herself, and then she would go back in and change the payee to Walmart, so it looked like it was a business expense. And because she was the only one that knew how to operate QuickBooks or how to look into it, there was no oversight. There was no way to know until this company actually almost went out of business because she was taking so much money. It could also be as simple as skimming some money off the top for deposits that are supposed to go to the bank. If there's no accurate record keeping there, a lot of people just pocket that money. I also had another case where one of the defendants was using a company credit card to make personal expenditures for things like athletic property, athletic equipment for her kids that were in school, just silly personal things like that. But she had found a way to essentially charge it against the company credit card and then go back and modify the receipts that she was getting from Amazon or from wherever else in PDF format, and then submitting different receipts than what was actually billed to her to make it look like a legitimate business expense.
How do you uncover that, Carla?
Usually it takes someone exercising a little bit more due diligence. So in the case of QuickBooks, that was because the business seriously almost went out of business, and they decided to go and look through line by line their deposits and their bank accounts and see that what the money that was coming in was not making it to the bank. So it's not just a matter of looking at the spreadsheets that your embezzler might be creating because she or he might have a way to manipulate that. You actually have to go back and look specifically at the bank statements, specifically at the deposit slips, and track the money from the time it comes in to where it goes and to who's accountable for it. But unfortunately, the people that are committing these crimes usually do their best to maintain absolute control out of all of those phases so that the employers are none the wiser. And a lot of times they'll come in and they'll first establish themselves as this indispensable employee. They'll act very intelligent. They'll be very, very good at their job so that there's this trust created, and you get the sense that this person would never steal from you, and then they use that to further facilitate their crimes. Now,
I understand that this can go, I understand the University of Montana has been a victim, all the way down to local churches. Just about anybody it's possible to embezzle almost any kind of organization, right?
I think that's true if you don't have the checks in place. So a lot of the times it's uncovered when people actually bring in an accountant that knows what to look for and knows how to track down every single dime and nickel and figure out where that all went. on the way that your financial system is set up in your business, anyone could come in and find a way to manipulate it. So you need to have checks and balances, multiple people being involved in the financial tracking so that one person can't take advantage of that complete control.
What can be the penalties for embezzlement? I know that the rules for a felony is $1,500. Anything under that is a misdemeanor. Is that the same rule as it goes to embezzlement?
It is, but the legislature actually takes a pretty hard line on embezzlements of significant amounts of money. So, for instance, if you embezzle more than $10,000, that's a separate offense, and that carries a mandatory minimum of 1 year in prison. However, there is an exception to the rule if a judge determines that that's not an appropriate placement for a particular defendant. But other than that, it tracks the theft statutes, and those were recently modified and reduced a little bit. Your first-time theft for over $1,500, you're going to be looking at 3 years. Second time, you're at 5. But for embezzlement, I did notice the legislature did not change that $10,000 threshold. If you steal more than $10,000, which a lot of my embezzlement cases involve that amount of money, there is a statute calling for that at least 1 year and up to 10 years in prison.
Now, what happens as far as trying to reimburse the victims when you were talking hundreds of thousands of dollars? Is that even possible?
And in my mind, no, it's not. I've seen a lot of cases on the back end of that probationary period where they've served their 10 or their 20 years and they're not even close to making a dent in that restitution. Another one that was pretty frustrating for me was a woman that had actually stole $200,000 from her employer, and when she was out on felony probation, she actually started doing the same crimes with two other victim businesses. So it seemed to me that she was actually stealing money again to try to pay off what she owed for her prior sentence. So I think that the chances of recouping those losses when you're finding out about it on the back end of things are a lot more slim. A lot of businesses now have insurance to cover those losses, and I think if you're a small business owner, you might want to consider making sure that's covered in your policy because you're probably not going to be able to recoup those losses. Okay.
Now, real quickly, maybe the top 3 things that business owners who are listening very intently to this conversation, what are the top 3 things they should be doing right now?
I would make sure that you have checks and balances internally in your finances, whether that's hiring a new independent accountant to come in and take a look at your books quarterly, whether that's having multiple layers of people reviewing the money that's coming in and having an internal checks or balances, whether that's you as the employer going through and looking at those bank statements. Just make sure that you don't have one person that has absolute control. I would say go to the bank statements. Don't rely on spreadsheets. Don't rely on what your employee is telling you. I would encourage people to actually conduct a background check on who you're about to hire and who's going to handle your finances. A lot of people just rely on self-reporting. Have you ever been charged with or convicted of embezzlement or stealing from your employer? Believe it or not, people will lie and not disclose information that you could actually find on your own by getting a background check or going to the Montana Offender Conweb website to see if they have any history of this type of activity before.
And I would imagine that the moment you sense any sort of inappropriate behavior, you should report it immediately, right?
Yes. I think that's the best way to go about it. That way you have a detective that can come in and gather the evidence and go from there. And by the time you've noticed it, it's probably a lot more intricate than maybe what meets the eye. So having a detective that can come in and review those documents with an impartial eye and can confront the person and hopefully get some important admissions out of them, I think that's important.
So do we contact law enforcement? Do we immediately contact the county attorney office directly? What do we do?
You would want to contact a law enforcement officer who's going to conduct an investigation and determine whether or not to send the case to our office for prosecution. So if you're in the city limits, that's going to be the police department, the Missoula Police Department. If you're in the county, it's going to be the Missoula County Sheriff's Office, and they can work with you and tell you how to proceed.